St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank, or the president of it, I should say, James Bullard, not sure how you pronounce his name, but he was speculating that basically we could have up to 30% unemployment rates in the US due to this coronavirus pandemic that we're currently, right in the midst of because of all the hugely disastrous consequences it's having on the economy and will continue to have, and how there could also be a 50% drop in the GDP, the gross domestic product. And 30%, if those numbers do end up becoming true, and I definitely think they could, because it was basically Goldman Sachs analysts reported that last week, I believe there was 2.5 million people who lost their jobs. If those numbers hold up to under scrutiny, that would be the single biggest job loss in a 1 week period in US history. So it's definitely, very possible that we could get up to that 30% unemployment rate in the US, which I believe during the Great Depression, the highest it got was somewhere around a high 24% range. I mean, substantially higher. And again, what's needed right now is, a type of New Deal response, but just on steroids, because this problem is just is affecting, everybody, and it's a global pandemic as well. So we need emergency UBI, things like what Bernie's proposing, $2K a month for every person in the U.S. till this is over. And this head of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, the president, he was also calling for 100% unemployment. Bernie Sanders is calling that up to, I believe, 70 or 75,000 a year. That's totally fine with me. So the UBI needs to be at least 2K a month for the duration, 100% unemployment insurance, rent freeze, mortgage freeze, moratorium on evictions, foreclosures, no student debt payments right now. I think they should just be wiped off, canceled. I mean, the freaking Federal Reserve is, giving out, basically $1 trillion a day to Wall Street, $1.5 trillion. You could put that towards student loans, completely wipes that away from, the 45 million people in the U.S. who are currently drowning in student loan debt. Obviously, making sure the, all treatment, testing, and any type of cost related to getting treated for the coronavirus is covered, free at the point of service. That's obviously another reason why we need Medicare for all, single-payer health care in this country, using things like the Defense Production Act. So private corporations are actually producing, these really much needed, supplies for these frontline workers. I mean, we really need to think about it in these really broad, expansive ways, and from a universal perspective, not, means testing stuff like the Republican plan was, where you basically got less than $1,200 a month if you made less than 50 grand, and if you had no money or no income for the last year on your tax return, then you get nothing. Which obviously, no, everybody needs at least 2K a month until the storm is weathered. People who've been laid off or fired, they need to get 100% unemployment insurance up to $70,000 a year. I think that's, perfectly reasonable. And any type of bailouts or, aid or help that we give to these huge, massive corporations, there needs to be huge strings attached, no stock buybacks, limit on executive pay for however long the duration they're getting this help from the government or from the U.S. taxpayer. We should really look at it from that perspective. And then to, also, if the U.S. government is giving these huge corporations billions, if not trillions of dollars in some cases, then the U.S. taxpayer, the U.S. government should get equity in those companies. We should become shareholders, and when the private industry buys those back, if they do at some point, then that windfall, those dividends should be given back to the U.S. taxpayer. So I mean, there's a lot of really common sense and simple solutions that could really help people out and just kind of pause the economy when this happens. But it's obviously, up to the will of the politicians, the people in power who are often bought and paid for by these same, financial institutions and these huge corporations. So it's really, making sure what happened in 2008, 2009 during the Great Recession doesn't happen again, where basically Wall Street gets bailed out and Main Street is left to suffer. We had the, record amount of foreclosures, people losing their jobs, that type of thing. That's going to continue to happen now. And, it's just really important that we fight and advocate for policies and programs to help out the people, the working class, and make sure it's, this aid isn't just directed to the 1% and these wealthy corporations, as oftentimes is the case for the reasons I just laid out. But I mean, it's pretty nuts to think about that potentially 30% of the U.S. could be unemployed. And again, we can weather this storm, but we just need to adopt these principles, these policies that will actually help people weather this pandemic until it's over, or there's going to be obviously a huge amount of suffering and misery that's going to happen for no reason, just because of our corrupt and greedy government and the lobbyists and all of that, just our whole kind of corrupt system. We really need to try to hold it account at this point, or it's just going to be hugely, hugely disastrous. So those are my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment sections down below. Peace.